Snow drifted gently outside the cafe window as the CEO sat alone at a corner table, staring into a cup that had long gone cold. For the first time in years, there were no meetings to rush to, no calls waiting, no one expecting him anywhere. Christmas lights reflected in the glass, mocking the silence he carried inside. That was when a small, steady voice broke through the quiet and asked a question he never expected to hear: would he like to have Christmas dinner with them? The girl stood beside the table, her hands resting lightly on a white cane, her face turned toward him though her eyes did not focus the way his did. She was blind, yet there was nothing uncertain about her presence. Her mother stood a step behind, surprised, ready to apologize if needed. But the CEO couldn't speak. He hadn't been invited to anything personal in years. People asked for his time, his money, his approval, but never his company. Especially not like this. She smiled as if she already sensed his hesitation. She explained gently that no one should eat alone on Christmas. Her family was nearby, the table was simple, and there was always room for one more. The CEO felt something loosen inside his chest. He looked around the cafe, at the empty chairs and festive decorations meant for families, and realized how heavy loneliness could feel even in a crowded city. Slowly, he nodded, surprising even himself. The girl's smile widened, and in that small moment, a quiet bridge formed between two very different lives. The walk to her family's home was slow and careful. She described the lights, the trees, the decorations she couldn't see but knew by heart. He listened, not interrupting, letting her words paint pictures he had stopped noticing long ago. Inside the modest home, warmth replaced the cold instantly. Laughter, clinking dishes, and familiar chaos filled the air. No one asked who he was or what he owned. They only asked if he was comfortable and hungry. Dinner was simple, but it felt richer than any banquet he had ever attended. The girl sat proudly beside him, asking questions about his favorite foods, his childhood, his favorite holiday memory. He realized he had forgotten most of them. As the evening went on, something changed. He wasn't the CEO anymore. He was just a guest, welcomed without conditions. Later, as he prepared to leave, the girl thanked him for coming, squeezing his hand gently. She said Christmas felt brighter when shared. Walking back into the night, the CEO felt a warmth that had nothing to do with food or fire. For the first time in years, Christmas hadn't reminded him of what he lacked, but of what he had almost forgotten. The walk through the streets felt slower than he was used to, but he didn't mind. The girl held her mother's arm and spoke softly, describing the decorations they passed, the sound of bells from a nearby shop, the smell of roasted food drifting through the cold air. She couldn't see the lights, yet she noticed things he had rushed past for years. He found himself listening closely, imagining the city the way she experienced it, through sound, warmth, and small details most people ignored. He realized how rarely he listened without planning his next response. With her, there was nothing to prepare. She talked about Christmas as a feeling rather than a scene, about how it sounded when people were happy and how it felt when everyone was together. The CEO nodded, smiling without realizing it. The weight he carried all evening began to loosen with each step. When they reached her family's home, it was modest and softly lit. As soon as the door opened, warmth rushed out to meet them, voices, laughter, and the comforting chaos of people who belonged to one another. No one looked surprised to see him. No one asked who he was or why he was there. They simply welcomed him in, offering a seat, a drink, and a place at the table. Dinner was simple, but it felt complete. The girl sat beside him, asking gentle questions about his favorite holiday memories. He struggled to answer at first, realizing how long it had been since he'd made new ones. As the conversation flowed, he felt something unfamiliar: ease. He wasn't performing. He wasn't managing. He was simply present. For the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like a reminder of what he had lost. It felt like an invitation to something he still had time to find. The evening passed more quickly than he expected. Plates were cleared, stories were shared, and laughter filled the small space in a way that felt effortless. The CEO noticed how the girl listened closely to every voice, turning toward whoever was speaking, responding with warmth and confidence. Though she could not see the expressions around her, she seemed to understand the room better than anyone else in it. He realized how often he had relied on sight and status, and how little he had relied on attention. At one point, she asked him what Christmas meant to him. The question caught him off guard. He paused, searching for an answer that wasn't polished or impressive. Finally, he admitted that he wasn't sure anymore. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. She said Christmas, to her, meant not feeling alone. That simple truth settled quietly in his chest. When it was time to leave, he stood near the door, reluctant in a way he hadn't felt in years. The girl reached out and found his hand easily, squeezing it with a confidence that felt reassuring rather than fragile. She thanked him for coming, saying the dinner felt warmer with him there. He tried to respond, but emotion caught in his throat, so he smiled instead. Stepping back into the cold night, the city looked different. The lights felt softer. The noise felt distant. He walked alone, but he didn't feel lonely. The invitation had given him something he didn't know he was missing, a reminder that connection doesn't come from recognition or power, but from being welcomed exactly as you are. That Christmas stayed with him long after the season passed. Not because of what he gave, but because of what he received. A place at a table. A shared moment. And a quiet lesson from a girl who couldn't see the lights, yet somehow showed him exactly where warmth lived.